Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a vlog form of a blog post which I wrote in September 2021 called Reading the Divine Comedy as a Non-Christian. And by the way, I am filming this on the 1st of November 2021, but it may not get uploaded until a few days later because I will hopefully soon have iMovie available on my phone so I can finally insert some images into my videos, and I'm in the process of updating my phone software so I can install iMovie, so hopefully that'll be a lot of fun. And I do have some particularly lovely images I'm going to plan to insert into this video, particularly some lovely Russian Orthodox icons of the Virgin Mary towards the end, so stay tuned and listen to what I'm going to say. Though Dante intended his magnum opus as primarily the story of his spiritual reformation and redemption, and presumed most of his readers would be Christians or future converts, you truly don't have to share that religion to enjoy it. Many of the themes and lessons can be interpreted in alternate ways, just as Krishna famously tells Arjuna there are many different names and faces for God, and paths to him, but none are wrong so long as one has a pure, devout heart and soul. And I have had some people think this is a bit of a misrepresentation of what Krishna actually says in the Bhagavad Gita. He doesn't actually say, there are lots of different ways to worship me, and they're not necessarily wrong. It all depends on, which translation or interpretation you're using, but, that is a traditional, long-held belief many people do have, and Hindus also tend to, pick and choose from lots of different religions and incorporate different new things into their religion, which was why so many Christian missionaries were very frustrated. Hindus say, "Oh, Jesus sounds cool. Let's just add him into my home shrine," and then continue doing mostly Hinduism. Only they would incorporate some Christian beliefs, and many people missionaries didn't understand. Hindus would just take from many different sources and inspirations and just build on their pre-existing religion. However, despite Dante treating righteous non-Christians very respectfully, struggling with his errors teaching that only baptized Christians could attain paradise, avoiding anti-Semitic tropes about hell, and saving a few so-called pagans, there are certain things which are still a challenge to read. This isn't a reflection on Dante, but rather my own background. Life gives all of us a different frame of reference based on so many things, religion included. And if I, came from a different demographic or intersections of different demographics, I know I would have a much different outlook on life. Like, for example, I might be politically conservative instead of very left-wing on most things if I had, been born into, economic privilege or a certain different area of America, and there are all so many different things I might have a different outlook on if I hadn't been born the specific person I am in the specific demographics and the intersections of demographics I am, and the different settings and religion and just socio and economic background. There are just so many things that would have been different if I had been born and socialized in not as what I was. My family background and my own personal religious history are too complicated and private to get into here. But the most pertinent thing to know is that I've been living a Jewish life since I was 18, after years of longing to reclaim my spiritual birthright. The religions I feel closest to my own, after my own, are Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, and Jainism. And I learned a lot, as I mentioned in a previous vlog, about Eastern religions. My freshwoman year of high school, when my global studies class, I thought they were awesome, and I just love learning about world religions ever since. I just love religions from the Indian subcontinent and Eastern Asia. I never really learned much about animism in Africa, but we did learn a lot about the Indian and Chinese, Japanese religions. Theologically speaking, and this is not like a personal attack on anybody, what I'm about to say, this is just stating facts, what Judaism and Christianity and Islam are theologically close to and theologically not close to. They're just, stating basic facts. They're not intended as personal insults or anything like that at all. Theologically, Judaism is closest to Islam. They were even closer before Prophet Muhammad got annoyed that more Jews weren't converting and changed things like how many times a day one should pray from 3 to 5. Again, theologically speaking, Judaism and Christianity are like oil and water. That doesn't mean, we can't be friends or have interfaith dialogue. It just means in terms of our theology, there are so many things that are completely different. A lot of important things radically contradict one another. So, for example, Jews don't believe in original sin or the divinity of Jesus. And if you look at the Hebrew grammar in the Torah, we know Adam and Eve already had sex in the Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, before they ate from the tree of knowledge. And we also, don't believe in the divinity of Jesus. We believe he was a rabbi. Some people believe he didn't exist at all. That's a long story for another topic, but just so many things that are just completely different in our two religions. And as I mentioned in a previous one, Jews also don't use the terms New and Old Testament to talk about the Bible. We'll just call our Bible the Bible, the Torah, the Tanakh, the Chumash, the Pentateuch, depending on which part of it we're referring to, and we'll just refer to the Christian Bible as the Christian Bible, or particular parts like the Gospels or the Epistles or whatever. This is a topic for another post, but suffice it to say, interfaith relations weren't very good until about 1950. Even after the Shoah ended and the world saw what had happened because of all this hatred and institutionalized anti-Semitism, there were still a lot of prejudice going on. For example, if you've seen the wonderful 1947 film Gentleman's Agreement, you'll know these things were just, part of society. People just took them for granted that, oh, we're going to be prejudiced and Jews should change their names if they want to get job opportunities and accepted into schools. It was just, shocking to look back and see what was considered totally socially acceptable and how many people just obediently gave into society's prejudice instead of challenging it and fighting back, or at least, staying true to who they were and not giving in to, oh, I'll just change my name so people won't bully my kids anymore. At the heart of the anti-Semitism, which culminated in the Shoah, was the deicide charge, accusing us of killing Jesus, of course. And while I'm really glad the only Jews depicted in Inferno are Judas and Caiaphas, thus avoiding grotesque stereotypes and slanders, it's hard to not be bothered by the deicide charge in Paradiso 7. There's also this horrible, cringeworthy tercet in Paradiso 5. If evil covetousness cries out to you, be men, and not foolish sheep, so that the Jew among you does not laugh. Yikes, just reading that, that's just horrible. Intellectually, I can explain and contextualize these statements to take some of the sting off. Dante cannot be divorced from his time and place, no matter how modern and relevant he feels in many ways. He also believed other things we now know to be false, like the donation of Constantine and Prophet Muhammad originally being a Christian and therefore schismatic, since there was no widely available information debunking these claims. And compared to many other medieval writings, like, for example, the Prioress's Tale in the Canterbury Tales, which is an anti-Semitic blood libel and it's just extremely disgusting and difficult to read, or the chilling end of the Song of Roland, where the victorious French go around tearing down mosques and synagogues and force converting the survivors, or the second, I believe it's the second story of the first day of the Decameron, where this guy seriously pressures and bullies his Jewish friend Abraham into converting to Christianity. And the moral of the story actually is pretty good, that Christianity survives and thrives despite the corrupt clergy in Rome. I wish they had chosen another avenue to do that besides forcing and pressuring your so-called friend to abandon his Jewish faith and his people. What is in the Divine Comedy is really tame compared to stuff like that. Out of 14,233 lines, these comments are a tiny drop in the bucket. Dante also questions why, if Christian doctrine says the crucifixion was necessary, the Second Temple then had to be destroyed and the Jewish people forced into diaspora. And because many people, politically on the left, don't really understand this, we are in a diaspora. The Jewish people are indigenous to the land of Judea, the Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. We didn't just magically pop up in the Eastern Europe in the 18th century, believe it or not. We came from somewhere, and we have long ancestral, unbroken connections to the land of Israel. And there were a number of people who never left, although many people, unfortunately, were forced into diaspora after the Second Temple was destroyed. But emotionally and personally, it's really hard to read that, knowing the deicide charge formed the basis of almost 2,000 years of horrific anti-Semitism in Europe, which culminated in the Shoah, and that even those few seemingly offhanded comments were part of a much larger picture that really added up. You can say, oh, it's not a big deal in the context, but when many other people say those things over and over again, and other people are just, hearing them and unquestionably believing them and taking them into account, that's why anti-Semitism continued, unquestioned for so long among so many people. It was because it was just such a general part of the culture, and they didn't even think to question it or think it might be wrong or horrible or persecuting people. Judaism and Christianity also radically differ on the subject of the Pharisees, which is a subject for an entirely different post, who were mentioned in a negative light in the Commedia, though all evidence from multiple sources attests to Pharisaic beliefs and practices, forming the basis of post-temple Judaism, and indeed being the very reason we were able to survive the loss of the Second Temple. Their reputation in Christianity is far different. Isn't really supported by the historical record. If you don't believe me, you can look this up. It's not difficult to find this information, but the Pharisees were, the good guys in Judaism. Their, beliefs and their theology and their belief system enabled us to survive past the loss of the temple, and it's the basis of all modern Judaism. Ultimately comes from them, believe it or not. Long story short, each of the four Gospels is successively less Jewish and more Christian in character. As time progressed, the two faiths diverged more and more, and it became obvious there weren't as many Jewish converts as hoped for. Thus, it was felt necessary to draw strong lines between the two traditions and seek converts from other populations. And so, therefore, they would kind of, slander the Pharisees and do some misrepresentations and things like that because, they were just diverging so much and they were kind of annoyed that more Jews weren't converting. But again, this isn't a personal attack on anybody or meant to sound like an insult or offend anybody. It's just basically speaking, this is, the historical and theological things. There's lots of documentary evidence for this. If you don't believe me, you can look it up. Judaism has no concept of limbo. While there are many conflicting views on the afterlife, who goes where, if very wicked souls stay forever in hell, whether Gehenna or Sheol is the place for the worst sinners, and what exactly all these places are like. And there's also a strong mystical, mostly, tradition of reincarnation in Judaism, which I also very strongly believe, although that's a topic for a completely other post. One thing everyone does agree on is that the righteous of all nations have a place in Ha'olam Haba, the world to come. We don't believe only our people can attain paradise. Dante leans heavily towards this view too, as he struggles all through the poem with the idea that only baptized Christians, plus the righteous people of the Bible, are worthy of paradise. What about people who live in places like India, where Christianity had no presence, or who lived before Jesus, like his dear Virgil? Indeed, he saves a few so-called pagans like Cato, Trajan, Statius, Ripheus the Trojan, and depicts a few Muslims among the righteous in limbo, whom he learned about from his dear mentor and father figure Brunetto Latini, who got translations of some of their books while he was in exile in Spain, and some of them, like Avicenna, were widely known in medieval Europe as well, independent of their being available in Spain during the Golden Age of Islam. He also says many people of other faiths, or of no faith, are closer to God than actual baptized Christians. St. Bernard of Clairvaux's Prayer to Mary, which opens Paradiso 33, is pure beauty, power, emotion, and devotion. And I'll read it now from the Mark Musa translation. O Virgin Mother, daughter of your Son, most humble, most exalted of all creatures, chosen of God in his eternal plan, you are the one who ennobled human nature to the extent that he did not disdain, who was its maker, to make himself man. Within your womb rekindled was the love that gave the warmth that did allow this flower to come to bloom within this timeless peace. For all up here you are the noonday torch of charity, and down on earth, for men, the living spring of their eternal hope. Lady, you are so great, so powerful, that who seeks grace without recourse to you would have his wish fly upward without wings. Not only does your loving kindness rush to those who ask for it, but oftentimes it flows spontaneously before the plea. In you is tenderness, in you is pity, in you munificence, in you unites all that is good in God's created beings. This is a man who from the deepest pit of all the universe up to this height has witnessed, one by one, the lives of souls, who begs you that you grant him through your grace the power to raise his vision higher still, to penetrate the final blessedness. And I who never burnt for my own vision more than I burn for his, with all my prayers, I pray you, and I pray they are enough, that you through your own prayers dispel the mist of his mortality, that he may have some of joy revealed before his eyes. I pray you also, Queen who can achieve your every wish, keep his affections sound, once he has had the vision and returns. Protect him from the stirrings of the flesh. You see with Beatrice, all the blessed, hands clasped in prayer, are praying for my prayer. Those eyes so loved and reverenced by God, now fixed on him who prayed, made clear to us how precious true devotion is to her. Then she looked into the eternal light, into whose being, we must believe, no eyes of other creatures pierce with such insight. And I who was approaching now the end of all man's yearning, strained with all the force in me to raise my burning longing high. So that's a lovely prayer, very almost towards the very end of the Divine Comedy by Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, who is Dante's final guide through his immense otherworldly journey. And remembering back to Inferno too, when Virgil is talking about how he was sent on this journey to summon Dante by Beatrice, and how Beatrice came to summon him in the first place. Mary is the one who ultimately set Dante's journey in motion. And given that Dante lost his mother when he was 5 or 6 years old, it's easy to understand why he felt such devotion to Mary. Despite not being Christian myself, I'm very moved by the image of Mary as a loving, universal mother figure. Many people who lost their mothers are particularly devoted to her for this very reason. And if I'm able to do some editing on my phone later and insert images into this, you'll see some images of the icon of the Umilenie, the tenderness icon from Russian Orthodoxy of Mary. It's believed to be at the moment of the Annunciation. And if you've read my book, A Journey Through a Dark Forest, not to give any spoilers away, but my character Inga, who was born and raised in the Soviet Union and an atheist and only comes to America at the age of 18 during World War II, she feels very drawn to Mary because of this beautiful icon and starts getting into like Orthodoxy. It's not particularly a sincere like conversion at first, like she's not a totally like committed and doesn't believe this thoroughly, but her love of and devotion to Mary are very sincere, and that's kind of like the opening the hook that gets her into a genuine belief which she grows in over time, because Inga also, she didn't lose her mother to death, but she was taken away by Stalin's goons during the Great Terror in 1937, so that's a very special relationship Inga has with Mary. And she does take Maria as her baptismal name. But hopefully you can read my book, that it's in volume 3 of Journey Through a Dark Forest, Inga's conversion and interest in Mary. While specifically Christological beliefs do nothing for me and have no parallels in Judaism, most of the poem is a rich, fertile ground for inspiration. Dante intended his magnum opus as a spiritual guidebook, and despite his own strong Catholic faith, he frequently thinks of other kinds of people. Indeed, the penultimate word is l'altre, the other, in plural form. The love he believes in, which powers everything in existence, includes a vast rainbow of perspectives and experiences, not just one. Hopefully I haven't been too rambly, and if you listen to the end, thank you very much. I really do hope to insert some images into this if I can get it onto my phone, and if you haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Now that it's NaNoWriMo National Novel Writing Month, I might not be uploading as much as in the past, but I will hopefully get at least one video out a week about book reviews, Dantean posts, books about general like literary topics, things like that. So see you guys very soon. Thank you for watching. Bye.